living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Michael Storm. This is Toward Anarchy. That means it's Sunday. It's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We do this live right here across the Republic Broadcasting Network. It's such a pleasure to be able to come do it. I love the live aspect of it. It's one thing to record these things and produce them and put out that kind of work. It's another to do the live thing, to have the pressure of making the clock. Yeah, right. Like I just don't cause producer Ken to adjust it as we go along. That's it. What ultimately ends up happening almost every time. But just you never know what's going to be said, and a lot of times I'm talking to guests I don't know. That's not the case today. Today Bradley Thomas will join me. He'll be in here in just about half an hour. And if you remember Bradley, he's been on the show a number of times. He's an economist and a political commentator and a writer. He's written for all those wonderful organizations that you know and love, like the Mises Institute and places like that. He can be found all over. And, of course, as always, I provide the links. If you go to towardanarchy.com, that's the easiest way to follow along. Just make sure that wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're on, or wherever you see the link to like, share, follow, subscribe, and at the website, buy a t-shirt. It was great this week. I finally was able to speak with somebody. Robert and Carrie, his wife Carrie, had bought t-shirts, and they're some of the first people to receive them, and I wanted feedback because I haven't got my own yet. Longer story. But I was sure the quality was fine. I've done business through here before, through Teespring. That's who's handling the T-shirts. It's real simple. Their methods and what they do is proven. And that was my thought about producing the little Toward Anarchy line of clothing. There's some T-shirts and some sweats and some silly other things. It's all just a simple win-win kind of situation thing where it helps support the show, helps pay for the website, that sort of thing. And you get some gear and you spread the message. You get Toward Anarchy. People see you wearing that around and have to ask you what that means. If especially if they're a thinker, okay, I know those words, I understand those words. Toward Anarchy, what does that mean? And maybe you can have that short conversation. I like tools like the T-shirt like that. For years I wore, and I still would. I don't have any at the moment, but InfoWars gear, stuff that I had bought from the InfoWars shop, things that would attract people's attention. Second Amendment shirts and the Fed shirts and different things like that. That would, I'd get comments just walking past. Oh, I love this shirt, or oh, you listen to Alex Jones, or whatever the comment would be. And of course, I say, well, no, I haven't listened to Alex in a long time, but I still support the general message and waking people up to what's going on in the world. And Alex has been a pro at that, and for years and years. And I always like the power of the T-shirts, and it's great to have something simple like this to be able to share. And Robert and Carrie had nothing but fine things to say about the shirts. They thought they were great, so I was really happy to hear that. And so buy a shirt. Go to the website, towardanarchy.com, and kick in a shirt. If you actually do that, if you click on the shop and support button where the shirts are at, you'll actually see something really cool in there. It's something I've talked about over the show over the last 7 months, because it's been at least that long ago since I sent them. but I had sent some comic books from my personal collection off to be professionally graded. I sent them to Texas. I received the sort of final confirmation proof of the apocalypse just before the show. In fact, apparently it snowed in Texas. But the place that I had to send my books off to be graded is actually there in Texas. I might have to work with Ken, send my books to Ken, have him actually hand deliver them, because the process is actually a little bit quicker. It's still snowing, apparently. But I finally got those comic books back that I had sent, and the reason it took so long in this particular case is because of this book. That if you go to towardanarchy.com and you click on the shop and support button over there on the right hand side, it's right at the top. You'll see it. You just have to scroll down just a little bit. It'll certainly look better, I think, probably on a computer. It's a nice picture, but it'll look good on your phone too. It's one of the books. It's the reason that it took so long, because this book had to be pressed. This book, I knew the second I saw this book that if it just was a little smoother, a little nicer, that it would grade considerably higher than what I picked it up as. And so I took the shot, and I spent the extra money and took the extra time. It killed me on the time, because the value of these books has changed considerably. I haven't talked a lot about it on the show, but I mentioned it particularly early on when it was happening. COVID has caused some interesting things across all markets, and that includes collectible markets, and that's comic books as well. And I'm shooting video, so I'll hold the book up for anybody who happens to catch the video later on. It's nice. It came out really nice. It's exactly what I expected it would be. I knew it would come back to an 8.5, which is sad, because I was certain that one of the other books I sent along would come back a 9.8, but it didn't. It came back a 9.6, and 9.8 is the magic number. This older book, this Incredible Hulk that I'm talking about, it's the second appearance of Wolverine. It's Incredible Hulk number 182 from 1974, and the fact that it's an 8.5 from 1974 isn't such a big deal. You know, that 9.8 is magical, of course, but it's less expected from an older book like that. That's almost as old as I am. But the other book, one of the other books I sent some books from my own personal collection for me, but I sent a couple of books intentionally to turn around and sell as investment pieces. And the other book that I sent as an investment piece is a Teen Titans number 12, volume 6, 7. It's yeah, off the top of my head, I don't exactly remember, but one of the more recent volumes of it. And it's the first appearance of a major character. Is called the Batman Who Laughs, and he's like this gothic mix of the Batman and Joker together. Is weird. Yeah, you'd have to read it to understand it, but it's his first full appearance, and he's a really hot character. And the book was brand new. It's never been read. It's never been out of the package, but it only graded 9.6. It didn't quite hit that magic number. And to give you, I could look at the exact difference. I could pull up the charts here, but generally speaking, it's probably worth twice as much just to hit that 9.8 as opposed to that 9.6, especially in modern current books. But it's the reason that I have the book up there at towardanarchy.com is because if somebody's interested, it's the first place other than across my Facebook that I've shared it to give anybody who would be interested in a chance. You just have to contact me. My email address is up there if you're interested in purchasing the book. It's not that expensive. It's only about $325. If it had come out a little bit higher, if I could have managed to get a 9 out of it, which it was hopeful, but I was certain it was an 8.5, and I was happy when it came back an 8.5. Definitely, I was glad that it didn't kick me in the soft spot and pull it back an 8. If it had come back a little higher, the price would be commensurate with that grade for sure. There's no question about that. And that was what I pulled that Teen Titans number 12 out of the package. I already knew. They tell you before they get to you, before they're delivered, and they came over this period, over the holiday period. Ultimately, the changeover from Christmas into the New Year and all that, and it was mailed back on December 12th, I want to say, and they came Monday. So just a couple of days ago. So they were out there for about 3 weeks, just floating around, sort of hundreds of dollars, really $1,000 or more in my comic books, just sort of floating around there somewhere between Kansas City and Topeka, if you believe the tracking information that was available, which they didn't send to me right away. I was kind of disappointed in that, but overall, I was really happy with the experience because I've never used this company, CBCS. They're the comic book version, the comic book grading version of the guys that have handled the grading for baseball cards for years and years. It's Beckett, it's PSA, it's their company. They're all tied together. And the guy who started it, I think, is one of the guys who started CGC, which is one of the other major graders of comic books, and it's all geek stuff. Anybody who knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about. they go on, they start a new company, do something like this, and I hadn't used them. Everybody uses CGC, and there's another one, PGX, and there may be one or two others out there, but they all have their own sort of level of respect and level of quality that you can expect from what you get back. And having not used CBCS before, I was impressed when I got them back. I like the holders; they look really nice. The grades came back from what I expected. I should have pressed my Star Wars #1. It's the comic book, the Marvel comic book from 1977. I should have went ahead and had it pressed, but I didn't. So it only came back at 7.5, but I think if I had it pressed, it would have come back an 8, maybe even a little bit higher. It's a really nice book. And I did also Wolverine's first series, and then I have the Watchmen #1, the very first one of that, and that has the classic picture of the smiley face button, except it has the drip of blood. If you've ever, they even make sure to use it in the movie. It's such an iconic thing since it was created in 1985. It's so iconic within nerd culture for sure, and they made sure to get it in the movie. So if you've ever seen the Watchmen movie right at the beginning when the comedian is killed and he's thrown out the window as he's falling down the window, and in that scene in and around that area, you see the drip of blood splash on the smiley face button, and you get that iconic image out of it, and that's that #1. Those were the ones that I sent off for myself: the Wolverine, the Star Wars, and the Watchmen. Those were for myself to keep in my personal collection, books of my own. The other two I sent off as investment, and they've ultimately, in the end, they'll be about half what I was hoping, because that 9.8 is such a big difference. That first appearance, that Teen Titans #12 that I'm talking about, that first appearance of the Batman Who Laughs, that's in a 9.8. You could, back at the time that I sent it, you could get $1,000 for it. The market is cooled. That's what I mentioned earlier about how it's fluctuated. Things have changed. Everything has been weird, up and down and in and out and back and forth on COVID. The comic books are no different, and it's not worth that much. You probably get $600 to $700 for it, whereas now at the 9.6, I can only get maybe $225, right in that area. Maybe if I get lucky and the price goes up on that one just a little bit, and then in a sale before I actually sell that book, I might get a few bucks more out of it. But it's newer, and the character's untested. The character's only been around since 2017, And so modern books are something of a gamble. Of course, The Incredible Hulk, this book that I have shared there at towardanarchy.com, if you click on the shop and support button over on the right-hand side, it's right up there, or at least it will be until it sells. If you click in over there at some time in the future, you're not with us live or shortly after, the book will be gone. It will sell. I'll either sell it through the website. Somebody will contact me and say they want it, or I'll end up selling it across eBay or one of these other places, or I'll sell it through my own shop. I own part of a comic book shop here in town. It could very easily go up on the shelves there, but it's out of my personal collection, and if I put it through the shop, I have to share with the shop. I have to charge tax. I have to do that, all that stuff. If I sell it personally from one person to another, I don't have to deal with any of that. If I sell it through eBay, I have to deal with that, and I have to deal with the fact that they changed. They don't use PayPal anymore, and so they've cut that out, and it's not been good. I think I may have relayed a short story about how I was upset with them. I even took them off of that support page. I actually removed that avenue as a way to help support the show and the collectibles and the things that I list on eBay. It's just not up there anymore because I just don't know. I don't know if I'm going to continue with them or if I will just. It would be really easy for me to add a cart in here. It's just another level of responsibility that I don't want to take. If somebody uses a credit card through there, you buy something through me and we use PayPal. I send you an invoice through it. They protect you. You're protected through their goods and services purchases, all of that stuff. If I do it, I'm responsible. If anything goes wrong, your credit card information, I don't get it through PayPal. I don't get your credit card information. I don't get any of that stuff. I just get a payment that goes to my account, and that, I don't have to worry about handling other people's private information or any of that. There's just a level of responsibility there that I am not really interested in taking on, even though I love the idea of cutting out the middleman. I do a lot of that. If you're at towardanarchy.com, check it out. It's under the shop and support page. But also, make sure to like, share, follow, subscribe. I give the buttons right there on the front page. It's a very easy thing to do. Also, January 10th, if you go there, economist and author Bradley Thomas, he's back to talk about what he's been up to. We'll talk about Bitcoin. I have some questions for him about that because people always have questions, and it's gone crazy here in the last month, in the last few days, so we'll find out what he has to say about it. We'll also talk about the social media, the censorship that is going on this week. He has things to say about it. I know for a fact because I've seen him talking about it. And so we'll find out what Bradley is up to. Yes, that's the image. Producer Ken managed to find one of the images. I have it. It's all over. It surrounds me. If I could turn the camera, I could show you it in a couple of different places because I have of course now the comic book here and it's on display. But I also have a oh gosh, who is it? Why is it not coming to me off the top of my? It's vinyl. It's a record, and the vinyl, the image on the vinyl is the picture, and it's from the movie soundtrack. And I want to say Good Charlotte, somebody like that. Oh, gosh, I can't. Man, I want to say Good Charlotte, but for some reason I don't think that that's right. But at any rate, I have multiple images of it around me and have for many, many years of my life. TowardAnarchy.com on January 10th. Also, as always, I shared the links. You can follow Bradley Thomas on Twitter. He's very popular on there, has great things to say. And you can also visit EraseTheState.com. We'll talk about that when he joins us here in 12 minutes or so. We should teach our children to be capable of violence. That's a question mark. There's an article up there. I also shared an article considering recent revelations, including a Harvard professor who claims aliens left their space garbage in our atmosphere. Will government make full disclosure soon? And there's an article to go along with that. Those are my words, but it's somebody else's article. It's a Newsweek article about UFO report that's due out soon. All agencies have been told, and there's a big thing about disclosure. And yeah, I don't follow it real closely because I kind of expect it to be this sort of a scam, right? We've talked about it before. We have to go into a break, and then we'll come back, and we'll shortly bring Bradley Thomas into the conversation right here on Toward Anarchy. I did everybody a huge favor this week. Well, I kicked on the lights. I have these nice lights. I've had them for a while now, and they're perfect for doing simple shots like this for the, just a stationary little thing like this. Definitely more designed for your use in like a photography type situation. So I kicked on those lights this week, and so it brightens everything up, and you can actually see in here a little bit. You can see me, but also along with that, I threw a do-rag over my head to cover my bald head so that the light won't be shining back at you right in the camera, because that's what would happen. Go to towardanarchy.com. You're looking for January 10th. It's 2021. Slowly but surely getting into it. It's been a good year so far for me. Things are going well. Knock on wood that it continues to go well for me. I hope it's going well for you. A lot of that, you realize, is in your own attitude and the way you're approaching things. And of course, that's why things are going well for me right now. I have a good attitude, and I'm doing the work. I'm putting these things in. January 10th there, if you have to click through the archive, otherwise it's right there on the front page. And the front page always tells you great information, because it tells you the show that I'm doing, or that is the next show to come up, as it were, or just the very last show that I did. That's how that kind of information is right there on the front page, plus listing as often as I can, or as comfortably as I feel about having things booked out far enough. Some of the people that are upcoming. Felony Melanie will be here next week. She's an anarchist and an activist, and one of these people who's been on the ban list repeatedly for things that she said. And so we'll talk to her about the that getting kicked off of the social media. It's happening this week. We'll talk to Bradley Thomas about it a little bit here in a few moments, because I know he has some thoughts on it. When he joins the conversation, we'll definitely get those from him. Lenore Skenazy, that's a name that you might be familiar with, but I bet you're definitely familiar with what she's done, who she is. She's an author. She's a founder of the Free Range Kids movement, and she is the lady who some number of years back allowed her 9-year-old daughter to ride the subway in New York to school alone. She followed her closely. She didn't know she was there. She was observing her, and it was I suppose at the time there was a big to-do, and she's going to be on the show in just a couple of weeks. I'm really excited about that. She'll be here on the I guess it's the 24th that she will be joining us. The name popped up in conversation. I said, "Oh yeah, that sounds like somebody I need to talk to." And then everything about the kid walking on her own and riding the subway, and that all being in New York and not that long ago, and the child being particularly young, all rung a bell. It all struck a chord with me, because my own kids are pretty well free range. We let them do and be who they are, and just try to guide them along and try to offer them advice about how to handle themselves and situations, the things that they come across in the world, and we try to let them be who they want to be. And so that'll be a great conversation, and I have another conversation like that we may follow up the next week as well with another individual that you may know of. I don't want to say anything yet, because I haven't confirmed it yet, but I'd like to do those back to back. So hopefully that will happen. January 10th there at towardanarchy.com. When you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing, when you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that men get richer by graft and by pull and by work, and your laws don't protect you against them, but protect them against you. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you may know that your society is doomed. And it was Ayn Rand who said that. Remember last week when I've talked about it before. I hate lawns. They're useless to me. It's funny, as these things always do, there's a synergy, and maybe it's because my phone is listening to me all the time. I don't know. I don't think it's that smart yet. I know it's listening all the time. It's listening right now. But I don't think it's that smart yet. But this is to get my friends to post memes and things that I would like, because this came from one of my friends, somebody that I follow. And it was great because it actually expresses visually with a few short words exactly what I mean when I talk about I don't like lawns, that I don't like grass. And it says, this is sexy, and it shows it just a natural wildflower lawn. Just everything is wild and overgrown, but it's beautiful. It looks nice. And then it shows another picture of just this nasty green thing, a lawn with this. It just, yeah. But then there's another one, and it says real lawns have native biodiversity. And then of course it's a more natural look. I think this is actually nature. That the point of it is that that's a nature shot, and that it looks more like the one that I think is sexy, the one that I think looks nice. Bradley Thomas is going to join the conversation next when we get back on Toward Anarchy. My daughter Zoe, she's the oldest one that lives with us still in the household. I have an older daughter who's out of the house already, but my oldest daughter, if you will, the one that's at home, Zoe, she would have pointed out my error quite quickly. I believe it was My Chemical Romance. See, I knew it wasn't right. It wasn't Good Charlotte. It's My Chemical Romance is the artist, the group, and I couldn't get away with that because that's one of her favorite bands. That's right from her era as a teenager, where those things were most important to people. I think, popular music and the like, and that was her favorite. And of course they were short-lived, and they were actually set to start a tour at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and go back out for the first time, do some shows that they hadn't done. It was going to be a pretty big deal. I haven't followed it. I don't follow it at all, so I don't know if they've continued on or if they plan to do something, or if they've been doing something during this time. I've had other things on my mind, but I had to go and look and remember to point it out, because I knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't excuse me. I knew it wasn't Good Charlotte. And then I just grabbed that so I could hold it up to the camera so everybody could see. That's why I said that iconic image of the smiley face with the blood drip. That's the Watchman #1 on my own personal collection. Man, it's great to have my guest back again. He's been one of the people that it's been a real pleasure to meet and get to know and talk to over this period, and there's been a lot of those, and so it's really cool that he immediately after our first conversation was like, hey, let's do this again. And not everybody does that right away. It's just because they're busy. They have other things to do. Maybe they don't value the conversation as much. But I think that Bradley does, and so it's always really cool to have him back on the show. Great to talk to you again, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Michael. Thanks so much for having me back on again. Looking forward to another conversation, engaging discussion.
Yeah, you bet, man. It's always a pleasure to have you around. What are you up to? What are you doing?
Yeah, has there been anything in the news lately?
Yeah, I know.
Getting into the swing of things here in 2021, and we're all promised that, hey, things are going to get back to normal, and boy, look how that turned out, huh?
Yeah, right. Well, the government's good at making promises. Authorities good at making promises that it doesn't keep. It's good at bullying people around and making them do things, but it's not good at producing really anything, is it?
Well, yeah. Aside from unless you consider war something that they're good at producing, and then just obviously creating power just for the sake of them just advancing their power still further. That's really where they excel.
Yeah, well, yeah, creating sort of havoc and ruining things. If you consider those contributions, then by all means, they're really good at their job. I mean, some people believe that that's really what they're there for, but I suppose that's yeah, that's. I don't know that that's ever a conversation that needs to be had when you can just look at the sort of evidence and the things that government chooses to do over the myriad of options available to them that are proven economics. I mean, let's get down to it. You're an economist. Economy is one of the big things that we sort of sit out here and look at and go, whoa, why is it that you do things the way you do when we can look right at them and see that they fail? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on the lens through which you're defining failure. For us, the people, we would say the government interference and government control of the economy is certainly failing because it's producing bad results for us, making us poor, taking away our choices. But for those in power, it's actually working quite well. And some would argue, I would say it's working as intended, which means it's centralizing more and more control into the hands of the power elite in Washington D.C. and state capitals.
It certainly seems to be the case, and yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly the point. It leads people to the question: well, why did they do it? And what it must be on purpose. There must be a particular reason for doing this because the result seems to be fairly obvious, and it seems to have been obvious for a long time. And the only people, it's only obvious to the people that don't get told in the public school system, in the control system, inside everything that's how it actually works. As long as they don't ever find that out, then they don't ever know that it doesn't really work. They see the failure, but they don't understand why it fails. They don't get the explanation, and nobody's really offering them one anyway.
Yeah. And one word I hear a lot about is with government programs is unsustainable. Say, well, this program is unsustainable. This policy is unsustainable. These budget deficits, are unsustainable. Well, according to whose timeline, though? The politicians' timeline is just simply getting them through the next election. So their only concern about sustainability is, can I continue to get enough votes to get reelected come next election season? Versus, folks like you and I, we've got families to take care of. Our time horizon is much longer in terms of sustainability, and so that's why we're focused. We keep an eye on the longer term impacts of all these government programs. But to the politicians, they can make all these grand promises to send out stimulus checks and welfare programs and make all these grand promises in exchange for votes. And it's working for them as long as they can continue to get the votes for promising all these handouts. And then the long-term deficits and debts and liabilities, and they can just pass that problem on to the next round of politicians.
Well, you mentioned the phrase "long term" a couple of times there, and that's a good point because it's one of the things that I thought I might ask you about. Because I pay kind of a little bit of attention to these things. I pay close enough attention that I know when there are markers in the markets and when people are talking in the economy about long-term investment versus short-term investment and where people are putting their money and what they do, why they do that in terms of relation to employment numbers and market numbers and all these different things. And long term is the game right now. I would imagine you probably are aware of this as well. There's any number of markers over the last 2 years or so that point to long-term investment, to people making long-term investment, which suggests then, of course, that the short-term outlook for the economy is not good or not as good.
Yeah, right. I think more and more people are waking up to the fact that what we're seeing right now in the economy, we're really just being propped up by the Federal Reserve. Just unprecedented amounts of money printing taking place, certainly in the last year as the federal government responded to the the COVID lockdowns and everything. And it's only so much longer that the government's going to be able to prop everything up and literally papering things over with printing up all this new money before the crack up boom, as Mises used to like to call it, when the inflation starts to kick in and everything starts to break down and the economy comes to a day of reckoning, realizing that all this money that's been flooding the system is not based on the real savings of the people in the economy, but rather it's just been pumped into the economy with fiat currency. And again, well, getting back to that term, unsustainable. That's just simply unsustainable, and I think people are starting to recognize that more and more.
Wouldn't it be nice if they would actually use that word in terms of printing money and actually explain that to people to make them understand that money is like any, if you want it to function like this, if you want the currency to function as actual money and sort of create wealth, it has to be based on something, and it has to be exchanged and moved from one place to another via market means, not by coercion, not by force, not by just arbitrarily printing it out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly right. And well, one of the things that it really benefits the investor class, the folks that are invested in the stock market already, who own those assets. Housing, another example. As you flood the market with this new money, a lot of that's going to get directed towards those assets. So it's those wealthy people who are heavily invested in those assets that are going to benefit the most, and it's those people, maybe lower income, lower skilled people whose wages can't keep up with the increase in the cost of living that's going to come up. Those people are harmed the most. And you even look at progressives; they're always talking about income inequality and the widening gap between the rich and the poor. But you look at the charts, and that gap really starts to explode somewhere right around 1971, right? That magical date when the U.S. dollar was completely severed from any ties to gold, and that really unshackled the Federal Reserve, and we've seen unprecedented money printing these last several decades, which has really exacerbated that income inequality. So progressive, the care to talk or care to pretend to care about this income inequality and growing income inequality, but yet they never really address the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is that federal money, Federal Reserve money printing.
Well, and so then you have to have these conversations over and over again with people to try to convince them that this free money, that just writing checks and depositing digits into people's account is not a good idea, that it's not sustainable. I've found that one of the ways that I can talk to people about it is through collectibles. People seem to think that it's a big thing. People seem to think that they understand collectibles. Almost everybody collects a little something, even whether they realize it or not. They have this thing it's kind of like, and they know a little bit more about it, whether it's cars or comic books or what have you, baseball cards, and to try to speak them in terms of that. Look, the reason that Action Comics #1 is worth $3 million is because there's only a couple of them out there. So if you find a stack of them, they bundle up comic books just like they did newspapers, especially back then, and sort of throw tie a string around them and toss them off onto the curb. You maybe come across one of these bundles of those full of Action comic books and introduce those into the market. It will bring the value of the existing ones down. So it's the same thing with money, is it not? Is it same thing with dollars?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic comparison. We talk about scarcity, relative scarcity of different commodities. So when you make, whether it's comic books like you're talking about, or fiat dollars in the economy that are available, the less scarce that they become. In other words, the more numerous that are flooded into the marketplace, then the easier they're going to become to acquire. And then, so now when we're talking about an exchange of dollars for goods, whether you're going to the grocery store or what have you, now we have people have a lot more of these fiat dollars in their bank accounts and their wallets there's still a limited supply of milk at the grocery store. So now the grocery store is going to turn around and say, hey, we can fetch a lot more dollars for every gallon of milk or every loaf of bread than we did before because there's so many more dollars out there in circulation. So when you look at the exchange in that regards and the relative scarcity of the commodity money versus the tangible goods, you can see how prices become inflated over time as you flood the market with those dollars.
And it's true across the board. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what market. That's the problem with manipulating the money at the core. And now we have a new problem. A new regime is taking over. It's a presumably much more socialist regime than the one that just left, which is hard to imagine. They're all so socialist, left or right. It just doesn't matter. But so everybody's running. They're looking to hedge, in particular their long-term bets, and they're looking to places like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been huge here in the last month or so, and definitely in the last week. And so I have to ask you about it. I don't know if we've talked about it before. I don't know if we've had the much of the conversation about it. I don't know where you stand on Bitcoin, and I don't want to lead you into my opinion of it either. So just the Bitcoin.
Yeah. Wow. Is Bitcoin money? I guess is the big question. Drilling right down to it, and I would say that first you need to understand specifically what money is, and so the definition of money, of course, is a commonly accepted medium of exchange. So in that regards, I think Bitcoin is certainly getting there. I guess there's some wiggle room in terms of how you define commonly accepted. It's growing. But one thing that I really found interesting that I kind of struggled with was when you understand how money emerges in the market. For instance, how gold emerged in the market. It had underlying utility. It had underlying value in direct use for people back in the barter exchange. So then it became so popular in use that people started acquiring it not for direct use, but for indirect use for a future exchange. So when something like that becomes so popular for indirect use, people acquire it not for direct usage themselves, but to use that in a future exchange. That's how that commodity becomes money. And so, and I was trying to make that connection to Bitcoin, that what is the underlying value of Bitcoin? How can a money then just kind of be created out of thin air almost, just from computer code? And a great answer to that question I found in an article published by Jeffrey Tucker of the American Institute of Economic Research just back in December, actually. He talked about the underlying value of Bitcoin was the payment system itself, that blockchain. So that had some underlying value, that had some direct utility that people valued. So then as that popularity of that underlying value, if that popularized Bitcoin and helped it emerge as an actual form of money on the market. I know it's kind of an abstract theoretic discussion, but I think it's really important for people to understand just what money is, number one, and then number two, how money emerges. And then from there, can we tie Bitcoin to that theory of how money emerges on the market? And I think Tucker's article does a great job of tying that together and making the argument that yes, Bitcoin is a form of money.
All right. Well, okay, that's great. That's a great argument. We'll come back here and we'll finish up that particular point in the conversation, because I like what I hear there, and I think other people do too when they understand this. They like Bitcoin. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy. TowardAnarchy.com. Point your browser there, TowardAnarchy.com. Look for January 10th, and you'll see my guest is Bradley Thomas. There's links there. You can follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/erasestate. And then, of course, erasethestate.com. That's his flagship website. If you don't know who Bradley is, I encourage you to go out there and check out some of his work, check out some of his writings. He's an economist and a commentator and a writer. He has a a collection of his tweets in a digital book called Tweeting Liberty, Libertarian Tweets to Smash Statists and Socialists, and he's very prolific on there and been very successful at it. In fact, he tweeted earlier today, just before the show, we can defend private property rights without defending big tech corporations who are appendages of the state. So we'll have to talk to him about that quote here. We'll do that after this, this short segment here, and after the top of the hour. But before we went into the break, you talked about Bitcoin and explained your sort of position on it, and I appreciate that position, not just because I don't think it's incompatible with my own, but I think it's an honest view of what it is. And the only thing that I would have in difference is that I go that extra step, and I try to actually look at it in the terms of so the definition, textbook money versus currency in that sense, because I noticed you talked about gold and you mentioned utility, and I always like to try to convince people that money, real money, has utility to it, that it has a purpose other than just to facilitate exchange, and that's what gives it that ability to always have an exchange of value when you put it away, where it becomes that store of value. That was always explained to me as the Austrian difference between money and currency, and what made the difference is that fact that you could put money away and know that when you pulled it back out of storage that it would still be worth something, and that fiat currencies, computer digits, that these things certainly so far are kind of iffy. And I just love the fact that you pointed out that it's the blockchain that's what's important, because that's what I've really tried to express to people, that it's the function, that it's the utility of the technology of the blockchain itself and the things that it can provide for us in decentralization and in terms of keeping. Well, one of the things is websites are, you can collect tokens, and now they have different collectibles and website address type addressing systems exist in the cryptocurrency world. So all these people that for all this time have been using these long hashtags, these weird mixes of letters and numbers, and you have to know that to send somebody some Bitcoin or something like that, are slowly becoming a thing of the past. But they also represent ultimately addressable places that aren't centrally controlled, and that's a longer conversation about the utility of the technology of Bitcoin as opposed to maybe the Bitcoin itself. Oh boy, I just burned that whole hour, or that whole short bit. That's all right though, because we'll continue the conversation with Bradley Thomas when we get back here. All right. Yes, we are off into hour number 2, and my guest is Bradley Thomas, and I just went on this long tirade about my own personal feelings on Bitcoin, but I do it for a reason, because I think people will hear you say one thing and not listen to the whole conversation, so I think it bears repeating that I don't find Bitcoin to be particularly problematic as much as I find Bitcoin schlockers to be particularly problematic, who are suggesting that Bitcoin is that they're getting people, particularly Austrians. I've run into this in social media groups, and I had to leave one here recently, a pretty big one, Austrian group, because of the fact that it just seemed like everybody was just trying to schlock Bitcoin, and it's on the premise that it is a viable currency. Well, I believe that it is there's no question that it's a currency in my mind, because it absolutely can be used to exchange with other people, but it's pretty limited in that you have to find somebody who wants it or who will otherwise exchange it for you. It's kind of like collecting comic books. They're a form of currency too, but if I really, if I want to turn comic books into, well, let's say a podcast or a website, I have to convert it. I have to get somebody to click on the shop and support button. I'm being very specific about this because it's a real thing. Click on that shop and support button and see that Incredible Hulk number 182, the second appearance of Wolverine, and contact me and buy it from me and give me some other form of currency that my web provider will accept in exchange for hosting my website and giving us that cool little lock security button up there. You follow me on that one, Bradley?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did want to give a quick reminder for that article that I mentioned before the break. It was an article by Jeffrey Tucker called "Why Does Bitcoin Have Value?" It's found at the American Institute for Economic Research, AIER.org. And that really helped for me, crystallize and answer the questions of, again, how can something that from initial perception, how can it be called how can it be considered money if it's just something that kind of created from code and everything? But he really does a good job of laying out it's really the payment system that's the source of value that provides that utility, direct utility to users in the market that then helps it give that underlying value to enable it to become an actual medium of exchange, otherwise known as money.
And what's great about it is as the technology has become more prolific and as more types of digital currencies have been introduced, other people who recognize that particular need to have some sort of real world wealth behind the currency itself to really help solidify it and back it and make it worth something tangible. You see the different developments in the different types of digital currencies that are coming out now and the ways that they're trying to associate them with real world development and creation. Digital coins that are tied to energy generation. Are you familiar with such a thing? Have you heard about those?
I have not really heard much at all about that, but I mean, I know there's so many just fascinating horizons that this technology is taking us to, and it's hard to keep up, quite frankly.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt about it, and I just asked simply because I know that I don't know, but I've read a little bit about it, and I have a guy that has sent me some information that wants to come on the show and talk about how producing electricity in the real world can be tied to the Bitcoin and the blockchain, and well, not Bitcoin, but whatever coin they're trying to produce, and so I think that's pretty neat. I think a real world application makes something so much more valuable. It takes it out of that realm of collectible or investment, and that was my point. I think with the Bitcoin and the fact that we have this new regime and we have people sort of running to look for new investments. Well, right now Bitcoin is a huge investment. What about bubble? I mean, are you familiar with it enough? Have you looked at it? Do you think that it's a bubble? Do you think it's sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you see such a dramatic rise in the price of Bitcoin in U.S. dollars, largely in response to the Federal Reserve money printing that we were talking about. People trying to, from an investor standpoint, trying to seek something, things like Bitcoin as a hedge against that inflation of a complete devaluation of the dollar that we've been starting to see, and I would argue certainly going to ratchet up even further, quite a bit further in 2021. But that was a really sharp rise. It'll be really interesting to see. I mean, that happened back, I think it was the end of about 2018, I think it was, when Bitcoin first rose up to about 20,000, and then after that it dipped back down and settled, and now we're seeing it kind of erupt again. So as a speculative asset, it's definitely, I think, a response to the Federal Reserve money printing, just how much higher it can go, or if it's going to, dip back down and trail off again like it did a couple of years ago. If I had those answers, I would be, calling you from my private jet right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Well, it's definitely something for everyone to consider, and it is one of those things that I try to caution anybody with anything. At this point, it's an investment. There is no sure thing, and everything is like that. That's why economics, understanding sort of human action, the things that we talk about, the things that the Austrians talk about, I think is so important, because I think you realize that everything is an economic transaction, whether it's for your time or whether it's for your energy, your resources, the actual cash in your pocket, whatever it is. Everything is an economic decision, whether you realize it or not, and you're balancing investment of your energy, your resources, on the return that you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in a world of scarce resources, like you said, that have alternative uses. So, opportunity cost is really the cost of everything, of every decision we make. Like you said, even for our time, what's the opportunity cost of spending an hour at work or spending an hour at leisure? What's the opportunity cost of spending money? You have $1,000. Do you want to put that in Bitcoin, or do you want to put that in gold, or do you want to put that in stocks, or what have you? Whatever the choice that you forego when you do choose, that's the opportunity cost, and that's really how you measure your decisions. That's the true cost of how you decide to allocate your scarce resources.
Might I suggest that some could invest some in comic books at the moment? So you had this tweet earlier today. It was right before the show, and it was great because, of course, it's a big topic of conversation, and it's something that anybody who is prolific, anybody who gets noticed in the social media has to be concerned about it. I caught a ban not too long ago on Facebook. It was 3 days for nonsense, literal nonsense. I used the term gobbledygook, and I didn't spell it right. And so there's a portion of that word that's offensive to people from the 1960s in another nation, in the 1960s and 1970s, gobbledygook. Yeah. And I got popped for that, and I was banned for 3 days. And at the point that happened, I was receiving so many friend requests every day that it was hard to keep up with. It was dozens of friend requests every day, and it was constant notifications, and as soon as that happened, it all went away. All went away just like that. Have to build all of that back up slowly but surely. So I've spent the last couple of weeks doing that, and all for a complete misunderstanding, and all over the words that we say and the opinions that we keep. And now the president this last week, and many other right-wing people, including an entire platform for right-wing people, has been silenced, or all but effectively silenced from social media and from the other the delivery platforms of social media over this past week. And you think that, as I do, that these people have some rights, but that this is really just the result of government and political influence, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I think you're getting it pretty good there. Really that tweet was in response to kind of the textbook 101 libertarian response. Well, social media, Facebook, Twitter, they're private companies, so they can do whatever they want. Yeah. That's not, they may be private companies in a legalistic sense of the term, but I would certainly argue that they're in bed so deep with the federal government that they're more apparatuses or appendages of the government as well. I mean, just even from some of these companies' foundings, getting subsidies or startup funding from the government, not to mention beneficial regulations that allow them to be privileged in the marketplace, and so on and so forth. So they're not really pure market phenomena, based on private property. There's a significant thumb on the scale coming from the government that really skews that quite a bit. So, I mean, we can really still make the argument about, arguing for private property rights and the rights of association in a private property-based society, and also recognize that these big social media tech giants, they're not a pure market phenomena at all. And so to apply the kind of the rights of private property to them, I think is a little misguided.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely a fair assessment. And I'm just like any libertarian. I'm absolutely the first thing that's going to come out of my mouth in that regard is that yes, this is their platform, but now let's have the more nuanced conversation. Let's talk about how they are subsidized, how they are politically influenced, how there is what appears to be, so I won't say left wing, I'll say a communistic, socialistic, a capture of the media, the general appearance of authority to everybody else. Am I mistaken in that?
No, no, not at all. And I'm also sitting here thinking just kind of how ironic it is that, all these left-wingers who've been calling Trump a fascist for 4 years are now essentially deploying fascist tactics, right? I mean, fascism, look at how Benito Mussolini defined it as kind of a corporatism, basically, in short, big business and big government in bed together. And so that's exactly what they've been doing with these big tech companies, in bed, not only in bed together, but also favoring one political party to punish and exercise authority over any sort of dissent or dissenting opinions. And so, they're accusing Trump of being the fascist, but they're deploying fascistic tactics themselves to try to silence their opponents.
By definition, and they're it's really very, it's so it's laughable when you hold a position like our own, sort of over there as opposed to with the crowd, and you watch it, because I spend no time watching national or local news. If there's something I need to know, I go out and find it. And so, of course, the events this past Wednesday, required some sort of live watching, and I turned on NBC, and it was disgraceful how statist, how authoritarian, how left it was. There was no understanding of what was happening. There was no historical perspective for anybody who might be considered libertarian or other than just sort of anti-left right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another thing that really stuck out to me was just obviously the response of the corporate press. Isn't it amazing how quickly they rediscovered terms like riots and violent
terrorism
mobs. After they tried to spend all summer gaslighting the American people that those were mostly peaceful protests. Of course that famous meme restarted to recirculate again on Wednesday with a CNN reporter reporting in front of literally buildings on fire, saying, and the chyron says, fiery but mostly peaceful protests, and just. It just becomes so readily transparent, and all the corporate press, they just keep digging their own graves deeper and deeper. I mean, this just is so transparently obvious, the disproportionate responses to these two situations, and it's just, boy, and it just really continues to draw and sharpen those ideological lines between people who have, the more statist beliefs versus the people who have the more independent or individual liberty and value individual liberty and freedom more so than the others. And people like to bring up civil war, but why would you want to favor that? Don't favor civil war, favor a peaceful divorce, basically. Why do we want to continue to live with these people under the same government when, it's so readily apparent we have just irreconcilable differences with these different groups of people?
Yeah, it's hard to sit back as an anarchist and watch. I looked at it as it was happening, and of course, my first thought of is, well, I'll tell you who's not there: anarchists. And then of course, you notice that the right was real remiss to use that word in reference. They definitely jumped towards Antifa and some other phrases, but they avoided calling. I haven't heard it much at all. I've heard a little bit of the left press use the word, but the right press didn't seem to use the word at all that I noticed, because that's a term for lefties, and they didn't want that associated with them. It was interesting wild events happening there, unlike anything that's happened in America in a long, long time. It's kind of funny that a lot of that left-wing press actually tried to make it sound like and it's funny because I took a drive too during that period, and I made it a point to listen to some radio. There's that live radio presentation versus the television, with all the cameras and all a different a view of things in that sense. Listening to them, they were all the same in that in their lack of understanding of history. They're calling it something unique when it's not necessarily particularly unique. They constantly played the race card. Well, what if it was black people that were doing this? It was very ignorant and very uninformative. And I think back and I look and I go, man, I can't believe. I realize, I get that these things are here. I understand that those voices exist, but I can't believe that people actually still listen to them. And then I think back over the last few weeks and the holiday and remember all of the family and all of my buddies and my friends that I talked to over the holiday who had the exact same thing to say about their relatives, all wrapped up in CNN and in that leftist media.
Yeah, and something else that really struck me is that a lot of these left-wing progressives were, holding up the halls of Congress, the Capitol building, as some sort of almost like a religious site. They broached this holy shrine of democracy here, and just kind of some of the wording that they were using was, to folks like you and I who don't really believe in authoritarian government. I found that really repulsive, especially so when a lot of these same left-wing progressives are totally okay with the government forcibly shutting down actual houses of worship all over the country. And so I just found that dichotomy to be really quite insulting and rather appalling.
It really is, isn't it? And that's why you look at it and you see it as so glaring and so obvious, and you just look at the people who buy into it, and you just have to wonder what kind of a person they really are underneath. And we're just about out of time. We'll come back here and we'll wrap it up with Bradley Thomas on Toward Anarchy. It is that's right there. Oh, ow. Poke right in the head, right through the brain, from one ear out the other. It's always a pleasure to talk to Bradley Thomas. You can follow him on Twitter at Erase State, and then, of course, erasethestate.com is his website, and you can find him in all the other places that he's at and the things that he's up to, what he's writing, and things that he's working on. There was one more thing that I wanted to specifically ask you your opinion about. That's another topic of conversation. It's going to come up under the current new regime, any more so than it ever has before, and that's student loans. And I've been trying to avoid doing any leading questions, but I want to make it clear. I think that there is no reason why we can't just end the programs and just eliminate the line item debt. That's it. The bankers don't get any more money. That's it. It's done. It's over with. It's gone. What do you think?
Well, we're that simple. My concern is actually the largest asset of the federal government are the college student loans. So if you wipe that clean, you are eliminating a massive source of revenue for the federal government. Now, not that I'm going to shed a tear for them. Obviously, the problem is then that burden to fill in that gap is going to just continue to crush taxpayers. So, I don't know that it's quite that simple. We need to kind of stop and think about how we want to take care of that. I mean, obviously, we want to get the federal government out of involvement in the student loan business altogether. But in the meantime, canceling all this loan means that the federal government is going to have to seek other means to finance their spending. We know they're not going to cut their spending. I mean, that's kind of a given, especially with the new administration. So, we kind of need to think then, well, if we do cancel those student loans, how is the federal government then going to try to fill in the gaps from that? Yeah, missing. So I think we need to have a conversation about that before we, go full force ahead with that plan.
Well, yeah, because you know that they're not going to just turn off their source of income, and that's the literal point, and that's the problem with all this stuff is that you either have to sort of shut it all off at once and just completely, just triage situation, take the leg off and get on with things. Otherwise, it just transfers from one place to another, one person to another, one charity to another. It just back and forth and around in circles until the big beast Leviathan itself is gone, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, and not to mention, usually it's the college-educated people, especially those with the biggest students' debt. That's reflective that they went to a school with a big price tag, meaning it was probably a pretty elite school. So now we're going to have, plumbers and janitors and working class people, paying off the student loan debt of folks that went to universities and even elite universities. That seems to be kind of another transfer of wealth from the working class to the upper class.
Oh, no question about it. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's such a as all these things are, such a longer and more nuanced conversation than just saying turn it off. That's the problem when you get people hooked on a system. When you manipulate the money in the markets and everything, you've got your pocket in everybody. You got your hand in everybody else's pocket. What can we expect to see from you coming up? What are you working on?
Yeah, well, continuing to produce new content at erasethestate.com. Actually, I had an article that was just posted yesterday by the Mises Institute, Mises.org. I'm going to continue to really track the progress of, as we see the new administration come in, what their approach is going to be. Are they going to ratchet up the stimulus checks to everybody, which means additional money printing? So I think really going to be monitoring what the Federal Reserve does in that action and continue to educate people about the negative consequences of the central banking, fiat money creation. I think there's going to be more an opportunity to continue to educate people about that, especially from the income inequality and wealth inequality angle, as that's going to be really become more and more heightened as we see more and more money printing moving forward.
Well, yeah, the last time that the Democrats held the office for a while, it was easy to bring a few more people over. So I imagine this time with them holding sort of total control over the entirety of D.C. at this point, it seems like we should see it should be glaring. Will people be awake enough to actually catch on? But we know they won't, so we just got to keep telling them getting them one at a time. One soul at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always important, too, to speak when you are trying to be persuasive with people, is speak to their values.
Yeah.
Like I said, if they are offended by income inequality, you can speak to that and place the blame where it should be, the Federal Reserve, other state interventions. If they're concerned about oppression of workers, you can look at government intervention in the labor markets and so forth. So, really
everywhere government sticks its ugly head is what we end up having. And Bradley Thomas, thank you so much as always. It's great to talk to you, brother. You take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We'll see you soon. And I will be right back on Toward Anarchy. I guess I'll have to leave the music in there so that way it gives me a reason to keep cutting it up to the point where I just start talking, because by then I've stopped making a fool of myself, air guitaring and drumming and otherwise headbanging and rocking out to the awesome music that I use. I really wanted at the beginning of the year to come back to the show with the music replaced to something that I don't have to worry about. But the fact is that I like the music, and I'm just going to keep using it, and I'll just keep cutting because there's no problem airing it live, because the network is not going to ding me for it like YouTube will. If there's even just a little bit of a song in there, they start talking about copyright infringement and all sorts of stuff, or at a minimum that I can't monetize it. In fact, I messed up the video with Sean Leal here a couple weeks back. Somehow didn't get it cut right, and it was flagged, and I ended up having to take it down because I kind of was not nice in my response to it getting flagged, and I didn't really want to take a chance of it coming back to get me. I've only just started using the YouTube stuff, really using it to put it out there, and even just in the last few weeks been trying to just capture the video of every show, whether or not the guest is in the video or not. And so I don't want to mess that up. I don't want to push the wrong button, so I just deleted the video, and so I have to repost that. But everything else is up there and on the YouTube and across all of the major platforms, Spotify and Pandora and iHeartRadio, and it's really cool to be out there and to be able to say Pandora after all this time. If you've been listening to the show, then you know the story of Pandora. When I first approached them about getting the show on, I ran into some gatekeepers, and then if I don't know if it was the content, I don't know what it was. I never received any kind of explanation, but I butted heads with them for months, repeatedly, over and over again. They always blamed it on the technology, and I said, no, that's nonsense, because the same feeds Spotify, and it feeds Castbox, and now Amazon, and the Play Store on Google, and iHeartRadio. It already feeds all of those. So if it's the technology, if it's the scripting, then it's on your end. It's not on my end. And we went round and round for several months over it, and I finally just gave up and decided that I wasn't going to do anything with them at all. And then one day, a month, maybe 2 months ago, an email popped up, and it said something about a new way to submit podcasts to Pandora, and that they were concentrating on, I guess all of them are, with the investment in Joe Rogan's show that was made. They're all scrambling to find the next Joe Rogan. That's the reality of that. They're looking for that next big hit, and whoever that can be, and so they're just trying to bring content in and ride it. And there was an interesting stat that most podcasts don't make it past 20 episodes, and it's funny that they say that. I've only just seen that statistic, and I don't, it's hard to know if that's true or not. I mean, I guess they're looking at the larger repositories of podcasts and seeing the same thing that I saw with a lot of them, as I'm looking around for my own exposure to see what it's like and how we appear out there. I noticed the same thing myself, is that there's all of these podcasts, but they have very few episodes, very limited number of episodes, and a lot of them haven't produced episodes in forever. So I think it's really special that we're able to do this every week, and that it just keeps growing and keeps growing, and put the network and this show and everything out there as it's awesome. But it's all on you. Like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Make sure to do that. The easiest way is just to share the links from the website. Share that around, because when I'm talking about these things, this being able to look at what's going on and where people are listening, and how we're getting the hits, and where all these different numbers come from, and how somehow we ended up number 13 in New Zealand for what was it? Was it under philosophy? Was that? I think I still have the contact from the analytics people, the people who do it. Let's see, what's it say? Number 13 in philosophy in New Zealand, and number 202 in the category of society and culture. And I just thought that was kind of neat. What else is up there in the top 13 of philosophy in New Zealand that people are clicking on, that I get to be up there, that the network gets to be up there, that those people all the way on the other side of the world, way down underish, get to hear and participate in this conversation from America, when it's the hotbed Oh boy, Wednesday was pretty much truth to that. Huh? After sort of a whole long summer of leftist-backed occupations and riots and I'm sorry, mostly peaceful protests across the nation. I get what they're saying. I understand the spin, but come on, let's be honest. With that happening throughout the entirety of this last summer, it was interesting to finally see a right wing uprising, a right wing insurrection. The new incoming president, Mr. Joe Biden, called it. He didn't use the word anarchy, and I thought that was pretty telling. Because they're always so quick to jump on that word, anarchy. So I thought that was great because when I saw it, of course I'm thinking, no, there's no anarchists there, at least not in the this sense of anarchist, voluntarist, the people that I'm speaking about who are living a day-to-day life, trying to avoid collisions with other people and trying to work voluntarily with other people to achieve the things that they want, to acquire the things that they want and need, like we do every single second of every single day. So those people, those instigators, those black bloc anarchists, you might be able to point to that. There's been some question of whether or not Antifa, whether it's a false flag. And I would argue that historically the state is involved in these things. I think if recent examples, you can point back to the DNC in 2008. It's well documented that there was sort of state-sponsored instigators, and so left or right, the state is used as a tool. This last week and the week before, maybe the week before, I might have even mentioned it last week. Not quite sure. There was footage of some Proud Boys, so right-wing, nationalistic, flag-waving, cop-supporting, military-supporting, these guys down on the streets, counter-protesting, protesting, and they came up against some cops, and the cops bullied them around, pushed them around, maced them, and within seconds, the flag they had been carrying with the blue stripe down, the American flag with the blue stripe down the middle, became a mat that you wipe your feet on. They were dragging it through the street. I didn't watch the whole thing to see the entire outcome of it. I got the point. It was that finally the right wing, it's been a while since the right wing has had a taste of the left wing using the state against it. It's almost like it happens every 4 years, and it happens through those periods of time in between the bigger election, the presidential election, and the sort of hype and the pomp and circumstance that surrounds it, and the circumstances that surround it. The idea that things change because the figurehead of the corporation changes when the work is still the same, when the people doing the work are still the same, especially the people in the background. You look at these people, they're 79, they're 80 years old. We've made this argument for a long time. These people are from an entirely different era. They're from completely different understanding. I'm on the cusp of being somebody that's closer to that understanding, so I get where their failures can be in a real logical sense, and in the idea that you can still use the state as a tool for positive change. It does not seem to be capable. It does not seem to be the case. It does not seem to be so, because for the state to do anything, it has to take from somebody else first. And so if you start there, you have this understanding that everything that the state is involved in is corrupt, and they go back and forth every 4 years, and during the time period in between, it's like they forget. It's all the same people who were complaining about the media today were suggesting that the media was on their side yesterday, or was complaining about government today is now government's on their side. The hallowed worship of the government halls is supposed to be a right-wing thing, isn't it? Isn't that we're supposed to be proud of the state, and we're supposed to be backers of the republic and the democracy, and the left is supposed to be the rabble-rousers and the guys that just don't quite get it. Well, isn't that funny, where just like that, literally in an afternoon when it switches power, everybody forgets that. They throw all their values out the window, and the guys that were saying don't break windows and don't destroy government property are suddenly breaking windows and destroying government property. It's no longer sacred anymore. And the guys that were saying, well, it's okay to break government property, it's okay to break the windows and to participate in this sort of protest, that's the heart of America, right? Did you forget that, you right-wing screwballs? And now all of a sudden they're saying, well, no, you can't do that, that this is a disgrace, that these are hallowed halls, that this is a place of worship, and by God, if you come to this place of worship, you better come in solemn reverence. And wow, I'm enjoying it. Like I say, it's hard not to laugh at the whole thing, being in the position that I'm in, being the anarchist, and realizing that none of these groups, I said it when the left-wing people were tearing up capitals, and I'm going to say it when the right-wing people are tearing up capitals, that none of you want liberty. None of you actually want freedom. All you want is your version of statist authoritarian control. That's it. So I don't sympathize with any of you. I sit back and I laugh at you, and I hope that you'll figure it out. I hope that, but the right, it should be so easy for you in the sense of individualism and strength of the individual, and the right to self-defense, and being prepared, and being fiscally smart. It should be so obvious that I'm right. And on the left, it should be so obvious that I'm right, because what I want is, I don't want anybody else to tell you that because you call yourself different, that you have to be referred to as different within some kind of system. No, forget the system and what it thinks of you, and who you bed with, and the things that you like. As long as you do it voluntarily, there shouldn't be any problem. That even if you have some limited government or whatever it is, some community that you insist upon being involved in, then they still don't have a say in it, because they just shouldn't. There's just no reason for it. There's no reason why any man is subject to any law or any dictate of any other man. We owe each other nothing in this world that we don't offer up voluntarily. Did it sink in? Did we get there that time? Have I converted you yet? No, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm really not. I think it makes great sense. I think it's good, clear, thought out logic and reasoning, and whether or not mine is the perfect voice for it or not, the message is perfect. And that's that quote that Ron Paul said, it's about having an imperfect voice but having a perfect message. The message is perfect, and so it's all about finding the right way, the right means of communication, the right way to deliver it, and the place to get those messages through. And it's unfortunate that so many voices, even voices that I don't agree with, are silenced so often. I would offer, though, that many times it's their own fault. So often it's their own fault, because they refuse to curtail their speech in a certain way and find a better way to articulate. It's one of the reasons that I like to come here and do this every week when we're talking about the communications and talking about trying to get a message through. Coming here and doing this show is an exercise in me using language to reach other people that I don't necessarily use all the time, because I speak a little bit differently when I'm here than I do in normal life. For one, I cuss like a sailor. I really do. Every other word's an F-bomb in my normal life, but I shut that, I filter that off when I come here, and it's a different conversation. It's a different way to reach people with a different type of language and a different way of speaking. But the message, underlying message, is still perfectly the same, and it's still a reasonable message that I think is worth hearing. And so that's why I do it. That's why the network needs your support. That's why the show needs your support. It's easy to do. TowardAnarchy.com. That's where it all begins for this show. And of course, if you're listening live right now, of course, you have to be a supporter of the network, because the network has managed to be here and to bring this someone like me. Come on, let's be honest. I'm not the typical voice of the network in regard to my particular political leanings, or even in my social leanings in that case. But the message is right, and that's realized at the core. And I believe that that's true of all the voices across Republic Broadcasting Network. And so it's a privilege to come here and to be able to do this stuff for you. And there's no better time to be doing it and to be analyzing these things, because of, well, wow. It's 2021. 2020 continues. And we'll come back and we'll wrap it up here on Toward Anarchy. This is always this short segment thing, and it's always hard to try to get really started on something. But there was one thing I wanted to expound on, an idea that I suggested. I guess it must have been 2 weeks ago, and this is about the masks. I don't wear the masks. I won't wear the mask. I've had some fun playing around wearing the mask, all dressed up in black and carrying my gun and just sort of trying to freak people out and standing in the money line at Walmart and stuff. Nothing, not even intentionally necessarily, and just sort of being kind of a jerk about the whole thing. When you make me want to wear a mask, then I'm going to make you scared to have people wearing masks in your presence. But other than that, I don't wear the mask. If you ask me to put the mask on, I will refuse to put the mask on. If you ask me to leave your store, I'll leave your store. And so there's a very clear difference here in the idea that the mask can be a violation of that store's property rights. The mask is not a violation. My refusing to wear a mask is not a violation of the property rights of a store owner. Occupying that space is a violation of their property rights. If they ask me to leave, I have to leave. That's my respect for property rights. But if they ask me to put the mask on, I refuse to wear the mask. If they don't ask me to leave, then I have refused to wear the mask, and I am not violating their property because they did not ask me to leave. So you understand the difference? And I say this, and I should have probably said it when I talked about it most recently, because there have been instances where I have gone into a store without a mask on, and at some point an employee has come by and told me to put a mask on, and I have refused. They did not ask me to leave the store, and so I did not leave the store. You see, the mask cannot be a violation of their property rights. But you refusing to leave the store, whether they use the mask as a pretext to say that you are occupying their space without their permission, that you're not following whatever rules they've set forth, then you have to leave if you respect private property rights. And it's unfortunate, because these guys fall into the same category, especially when you're talking about the Walmarts and the larger businesses. The smaller businesses don't necessarily, certainly around here, they don't seem to be particularly I don't enforce it at my business. The gas station that I give all my business to, they don't enforce it there. There are other places that I've been, they don't enforce it, but the corporations do. And of course, we're talking about fascism. We're talking about American fascism. These corporations are in bed with the state, and they're given special privilege. And because they're given special privilege, they have to follow rules more closely. And so by proxy, you and I are forced to meet an illegal mandate, in particular wearing these masks. And Wow, look at what's coming up because we have the new president taking over on the 21st. He begins his regime, and one of the things that he's said repeatedly is that he'll have a 100-day mask mandate across the nation, a federal one. That's kind of scary. That's a scary proposition. All right, we got to go, but next week, Felony Melanie will be here, and until then, you take care.